Well, I think the thing with Bitcoin is what excites me about it is the way that it's different from what we already have, in a really fundamental way. We've got PayPal. The fact of the matter is PayPal works pretty good for most people. You send money, gets to the other end. If something happens, there's fraud protection. It's actually a pretty good system, and I think people kind of forget that. And for most merchants, it's a really good system, and it works well. Where it kind of breaks down is the fact that it has a central intermediary in between you and the person you're paying. Bitcoin removes a central intermediary. So what I've really been doing with all my work in Bitcoin is to keep it that way. Right now, Bitcoin has technical challenges where if we want to, say, scale up, we might want to go add intermediaries again for really boring technical reasons. And unfortunately, I'd much rather see that not happen, or if that does happen, at least happen in a way that gives you options. And unfortunately, other people don't see it that way. So, that's the nutshell of what I'm working on. Keep it decentralized. Development community, research community. I would describe myself more as a researcher. And I've been most interested in learning about how does it work at a low level. What's really underneath the hood, so to speak. But I think what's really notable is what I've found is because Bitcoin is based around this mining process that's not unlike voting, Bitcoin development is surprisingly political. Because, we've got all these trade-offs, like how are you going to make a transaction? What can you use the system for? And so many of these trade-offs are questions that are not answerable by just strict technological arguments. The domain of what you can do, what's possible, is technology. But what we want it to be, that's political. A good example being, right now I go work for Mastercoin, counterparty in colored coins. And they're all layers built on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. But the Bitcoin blockchain only has a megabyte of data every 10 minutes that it can process. So if Mastercoin's doing transactions, other people aren't. And it's a auction system. It's whoever wants to go pay gets in. And suddenly it's politics. Do we want to go have Mastercoin on the system? Some people would like to see it blocked. Some people think Bitcoin has a purpose. That is their particular vision, and their particular vision doesn't match other people's vision. So, negotiating that's just very political. And then you get the next layer of, well, in many cases you don't need to ask permission. You can argue all you want that I should not be able to use a Bitcoin blockchain for what I want it to do. But if you already accept freedom of transaction and the ability to, use Bitcoin without asking for permission, well, I can go use it for a lot of things that you might not like.
What do you think about sidechains and the possible problems that will arise with them?
So, sidechains is a really interesting example of this politics in action, because with merge mine sidechains, where you decide what has happened based on mining power, mining power driven consensus. Well, what merge mining is really saying is that if you're already mining Bitcoin, you're allowed to also go and pick the consensus, really pick the history, pick what happens on another cryptocurrency system. And it'd be almost in some ways kind of like, imagine if I'm Canadian and I go decide, the Canadian vote would be more secure if we let Americans vote in it too. So if Americans have the same interests as you, great. You'll be able to outvote anyone else in this whole system. Because of the crazy way consensus works is whoever has the mining power gets a vote. On the other hand, if these Americans aren't in the same interests as you, they're going to outvote you. And they're going to be able to do it for free because of the way merge mining works. There's no cost to you to go and merge mine another chain. And you may go find that your vote goes against your wishes very, very quickly. Now, for a pragmatic example, so Zero Cash is an extension to Bitcoin, which allows for truly guaranteed by math anonymous transactions. It gives you complete financial privacy. It's very, very strong, very good at this. And I know there's already people in the Bitcoin community who don't want to see it happen. They believe Bitcoin is better without financial privacy. And I can agree and disagree, but if I disagree with that statement, if I believe financial privacy is a good thing, then obviously I want Bitcoin, zero cash to survive. Well, if I want zero cash to survive, should I give people who don't want zero cash to survive a vote at no cost to them? I'm probably going to say no. Well, what's the technical outcome of that? Well, I implement zero cash on top of the Bitcoin blockchain in such a way that it's hard to block, or maybe impossible to block. And right there you have a big political fight. Yeah, so I said with regard to stealth addresses that, often people don't understand the implications of math developments later, until much later. And that's a perfect case of point where with stealth addresses, the basic math to make them possible, the idea of having this elliptic curve, Diffie-Hellman, handshake, and so on, we understood that probably 2.5 years ago. But the need for it, the bigger picture of how you would use it, we kind of forgot that. And I think it's a good example of how often with these technologies, you really have to deploy them, implement them, and then watch for feedback. Watch how people use it. Because without that real-world usage, you don't really see where you can improve. You don't see where you can make use of all this theory. It's like the academics are giving you options, but what options do you want to use? It's a good question. Well, it's worth remembering that with Dark Wallet, as much as there's a lot of, shall we say, rhetoric coming out of that group, what they're actually doing is very moderate stuff that I think tons of people on all parts of the political spectrum agree with. The idea that you have privacy and freedom of speech, that's been a part of Western-style democracies for hundreds of years. There's nothing extremist about that idea. That's a very moderate idea that nearly everyone holds. The extremists are the people who go say that we should have radical transparency, you shouldn't have financial privacy, you should have the government knowing everything you do. It's like, no, that's a very, very extreme position. And it's something that I don't think the majority of the population hold at all. I sure hope they don't. I don't think they do. I think if people understood how much corporation and the government know about you, they would realize that, hang on a second, something like Dark Wallet makes a lot of sense. And equally, I think we're seeing that other wallets are implementing these exact same features. When I talk to BitPay, when I talk to, Coinbase, they believe in privacy features. And Dark Wallet may be prototyping them, but there's, it's not like they're holding a view that's any different than anyone else. What they're different about is, libertarian ideals and whatnot, but that's not something that drives the software. That's just views they go hold. What drives the software is principles that we all hold.